Dear students, welcome back to this video series where we'll be looking at the application questions for our Emath paper 2. Okay, so today the question that we have is from our 2019 prelim exam, right? And let's look at this question together. So I suppose that you have already read through the question, so I'll go a little bit fast, right? So let me just briefly go through the context. So basically this person is invited to this concert at Kallang Theatre, right, on a Saturday from 7 to 9:30 p.m. However, he has to work from 1 to 6 p.m. on that same Saturday afternoon, okay, at this place, Shaw House. Okay, so basically we know that he has to first work before going to this theatre, right? So for him to make arrangements to the theatre, he has two options. The first one, he can choose to drive, means he drive his own car. Second, he can simply just call a taxi. Yeah. So the next information basically just tells us about the petrol consumption of his vehicle. Okay, so this part over here, right, and the table below shows his two options in comparison. So basically the options that he has to consider when he drives and the option that he has to consider when he simply takes a taxi, right? So if he drives, he has to do three things. He has to first settle his parking, right, at both his workplace, at Shaw House and Kallang Leisure Park, which is the place where he's going to watch this show. He has to also consider the petrol consumption, and finally he has to consider the ERP. Okay, so let's look at the first question. The first question actually basically tells us that the actual distance from Shaw Center to Plaza Sing is 2.4 km. And what we need to do is to estimate the scale of the map in the form of 1:n, right? Giving the answer correct to 2SF. Okay, so how can we do this? So you recall that the scale of the map is basically written in the form of 1:n, where, right, the first number represents the map distance, right, and the second number represents the actual distance, right, and both of them have the same units in cm. Okay, so that means how much map distance, okay, will give us an actual distance, okay, in real life. So what we need to do is simply in this case, right, since we are given the actual distance, what we can do is simply zoom into this part over here, identify the two places of interest, so basically Shaw Center and Plaza Singapura. Okay, and what we do is to take a ruler and simply measure these line segments over here. Okay, so this is actually the map distance, okay, which we are looking for. Okay, so your calculations really depends on how accurate you measure your answer. Okay, so suppose that you try your very best to measure, you should be getting roughly 0.7 plus 0.6 plus 3 cm, and that gives you 4.3 cm. So that's actually the map distance. Okay, now we know that 4.3 cm, okay, represents, right, 2.4 km. Okay, instead of writing represents, let's just use the ratio sign. Yeah, so 4.3 cm would therefore means 2.4 multiplied by 1000 multiplied by 100. So what we have done is simply convert 2.4 km to cm. Finally, right, 1 cm is just basically 2.4 times 1000 times 100 divided by 4.3, and this should give us 55813.953, right? And what we want to do is to give the value of n correct to 2SF. Yeah, so this is approximately 56,000. Okay, so the map scale is 1:56,000, and we are done. Okay, so this is an easy 2 marks, right? I hope that you should be able to answer this question independently. Now let's look at the next part. Okay, so the next part of the question simply says that if we would like to use the information provided, we want to justify which option should Russell take in order to save costs. Okay, and we would like to show our calculations clearly. Okay, so this is an 8-mark question. So the best way to tackle this question is to actually provide as much relevant information as possible. Okay, so we try to write as much relevant information, we try to do as much to get as many marks. Okay, as long as your answer is reasonable, likely that the markers will be able to accept. Okay, so for in this case, when we say that we want to save costs, so clearly what we want to do is to actually calculate, right, which mode of transport, right, be it driving or taxi, either which is more cost effective. That means which one is cheaper. Okay, so let's start with the driving first. So if we were to drive, okay, so you recall the 3 things that he has to do. He has to consider parking, petrol, and ERP. Okay, so let's look at the parking cost first. So basically, just a recap. Russell works on a Saturday from 1 to 6 p.m. and his show starts at 7 p.m. and ends at 9:30 p.m. Okay, so Shaw House is his workplace. Kallang Leisure Park is the place where he would like to go to watch the movie, the show. Okay, so let's look at the charges for Saturday. Okay, when he parks at his workplace. So for Saturday, the charges are the same as weekdays. So we can simply just look at this table on the top. Okay, so how much does he need to pay? So he simply needs to pay $2 for the first hour, right? And $1.50 for the next subsequent 30 minutes from 3 a.m. to 6 p.m. And this falls within his working timing. So we should only consider information from this part, right? We can just simply ignore this portion because it's from 6 to 3 a.m. Irrelevant. Okay? So what now? Okay, so let's count his parking costs at Shaw House. Okay, so $2 for the first hour, so $2. Okay, and what else? Okay, so that's for the first hour. He works from 1 to 6 p.m. 1 to 6 p.m. So total 5 hours, right? So for the next remaining 4 hours, there are 8 blocks of 30 minutes. So 8 multiplied by 1.5, which is $1.50 for each 30-minute block. Okay, next, how much does he need to pay if he parks his vehicle at Kallang Leisure Park? Okay, so we should be looking at this row over here because it's Saturday. So his timing falls within this range, right? 7 to 9:30 p.m. Okay, so we should be looking at this information over here. So this is irrelevant because it's from 8:30 to 6 p.m. Okay, so he has to simply pay a fixed rate of $2.30 per entry, right? So let's add $2.30. Okay, so now we are done with the parking. We are happy. Okay, so now what else do we need to do? We have to consider the petrol cost. So how much does it take for him to drive? Okay, so this is basically the information I extracted from above. The actual distance between his workplace and KLP is 8.7 km, and average time taken is 19 minutes. Okay, so using this information, right, let's see how much is his petrol cost. Okay, over here. So this part where I put a star. His vehicle consumes 7 liters of petrol for each 100 km traveled, and each liter costs 2.97. Right? So the total petrol cost is simply 8.7 km per 100 km, right? And each km costs requires, in fact, 7 liters of petrol, and each liter of petrol costs $2.98, right? 98 cents. Let's check. Is it 98? Sorry, 97. So let's be more precise. 97. Okay, so we have settled the petrol cost, and finally let's settle the ERP. Okay, so ERP is simply tax effectively, okay, on vehicles that are traveling on congested roads in Singapore. Is to mainly used to manage traffic. Okay, so on a Saturday, okay, what we are assuming is that he passed through the he passed through the gantry at a certain timing, right? We are assuming that the average time he takes to travel to reach Kallang Theatre, right, from his workplace is around 90 minutes. So if he end works at 6 p.m., we are assuming that he reaches at around 6:19 p.m. So he should be falling within this range, which costs $1. Okay, so $1. Okay, so with that being said, okay, do you realize that we are actually making some assumptions for the parking as well, right? So basically for the parking, what we are doing is we are assuming that he reaches his workplace, right, exactly at 1 p.m., right, although he start works at 1 p.m. and he ends exactly at 6 p.m. Okay, so he only incurs 5 hours of parking charges. Okay, and although he takes around 19 minutes to reach, okay, the theatre, we assume that he enters the car park, okay, at Kallang Leisure Park exactly at 7 p.m. and when the show ends at 9:30 p.m. he's already out. Okay, so there's no buffer time. We are just assuming, right, that, okay, he takes 2.5 hours, he requires 2.5 hours of parking time at Kallang Leisure Park as well. Okay, so that's what we have done, and if you were to add this up, you should get $19.11 corrected to 1 decimal place. Okay, so finally let's consider how much he would spend if he would to take the taxi as instead. Okay, so for the taxi, it's very straightforward. Most of you should be able to do this independently. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is to consider the base fare. Next, you have to consider the distance fare, and after that the timing fare. Okay, so we know that no matter what he do, once he get on the taxi, he has to pay $2.50. That's the flat rate. Okay, then how much distance fare does he need to pay? So 50 cents for every 1 km, right? So an average distance, or rather the actual distance, right, between Shaw House and Kallang Leisure Park is 8.7. Okay, so we have to add 8.7 multiplied by 50 cents. Okay, and finally the average time taken to reach, okay, the theatre is 19 minutes, and the cost is at 0.16 cents per minute. Okay, so let's remember to add 19 times 0.16. So are we done? So most of you will have stopped here, right? Okay, so don't forget that we still have to add the ERP cost. Okay, we still have to add the ERP cost because a taxi would require to pass through the gantry, right? And ERP cost is similarly fixed at $1, okay, because it's a vehicle as well. So remember to add $1. So this would add up to give us $10.89. Okay, so to save costs, clearly he should take the taxi. Okay, so that is our conclusion, and these are the relevant workings that you have to show us, okay, to show that you understand, okay, the context of the question and how you should approach the question. Okay, just a last pointer to add on. For the parking cost, some of you may actually consider, right, using this information, which is actually the season parking. Okay, that is fine as well. You will get a slightly different answer. Okay, but what I am doing over here in my calculations is that I'm assuming, okay, that he is driving to his workplace one-off. That, okay, so basically that assuming that he usually don't drive lah. Okay, so basically what I mean is that he is just simply driving to work for that single particular day. So that's why he's just paying this one-off parking fee. But usually people don't pay parking fee every day, right? In the real world, they pay monthly or a yearly parking fee, right? Like the teachers, right? In Singapore, we pay a yearly parking fee, right? And that's how we are able to park in school as well. Okay, so I hope that you understood this question well, and all the best for your revision.